another very famous scholar, Justin Martyr, who died in the year 165, and he's having a dialogue with someone who's not a Christian, and he's trying to persuade them. So he says, I shall attempt to persuade you, since you have understood the scriptures of what I say, that there is said to be another God and Lord, subject to the maker of all things. So when he's introducing Jesus, he says Jesus is subject to the maker of all things. So yes, Justin Martyr, we don't deny, he held Jesus to be divine, but he still held him to be subject to the creator of all things, which means he did not believe in the orthodox doctrine of the Trinity. So these three early scholars that all Christians except Clement of Rome, Polycarp, Justin Martyr, they did not have the orthodox belief of the Trinity. So we want to know, were they true Christians? Can they really be? If these are your earlier scholars, why don't they share the same beliefs as you? How is this possible? Where did these beliefs come from? So it's very important that you see here that the precedent, we look historically at the Trinity, in the first few centuries, it wasn't there. The orthodox version of the Trinity was not there. And we need to understand that some of these were scholars of Christianity that dedicated their lives to Christianity. And yet they are unable to realize that the Son is equal to the Father, which today is held to be a basic tenet of Christianity. How can a basic, essential tenet of your faith be something unrecognizable to your greatest scholars of the earliest centuries? You know, that's something that you cannot understand, that's something that's unfathomable. So that's one way. So when we analyze the Trinity historically, we look at the sayings of the church fathers, and I've provided three here, but there's many more, who didn't believe in the original doctrine of the Trinity that's prevalent today. Now, also when we're analyzing it historically, we look at the Council of Nicaea. And here, although we've discussed this in detail, what happened in the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, how there were these differing views on who Christ was, and how one view won out in the end. And remember, at that time we said that the Emperor Constantine, he had a great role to play in determining which view the council took. So the Council of Nicaea, just to recap, took place in the year 325 in the Roman Empire. There was a massive uproar going on. You had half of the people saying that Jesus was God and equal to God, and you had another camp who was just as big saying that Jesus is subservient to God and he's not eternal. And now they met now to discuss this in Nicaea. They spoke about it for weeks, months, and eventually they came out with the Creed of Nicaea. But Constantine, he was the one who convened this entire council, and he just accepted Christianity. He didn't really know much. He wasn't concerned about getting to the truth as he was about uniting his empire. And here we have from one of his letters where he's talking to one of the Christians, and he says, when I heard of your division, I was convinced that this matter should by no means be neglected. I shall feel my desire fulfilled only when I see the minds of all united in that peaceful harmony. Put away all causes of strife and loosen all knots of discord by the laws of peace. So here, this is from one of his letters where you can clearly see his objective is not to get to whether Jesus is God or not God. He just wants everyone to be united. So when he sent his bishop Hosius out to go and do the homework, and he told him that the best move for us is to make Jesus equal to God, that's your best way of getting unity in the land, this is what Constantine did. So it was he who proposed and perhaps even imposed this expression in the Creed of Nicaea, homoousios, which means that the Father and the Son are from the same essence. And it was he who provided government aid to those who accepted it, and he exiled those who didn't accept this. Now, how can this council, we want to ask like from a philosophical point of view, how can this council determine what's haq, what's true and what's not true? Obviously, there were so many other matters at play. There were so many things happening. It's happening in the year 325, almost 3 centuries after Jesus. How can this council decide what's a basic belief in your religion and what's not? And, you know, if you're going to say, okay, the reason why it's counted, that is because all the scholars got together and they came up with this view, and therefore, because all the scholars said it, therefore it's true. Well, then we want to talk about what happened after that. So, when Constantius became the sole ruler of the empire, in 359 he made 2 of his own councils, one in the east and another in the west. These councils were attended by more bishops than at Nicaea, and they were more representative of the entire church. Like his father Constantine before him, Constantius also involved himself in the council proceedings, and he basically made sure that this council voted something opposite to the Council of Nicaea and made the entire Christianity believe that Jesus was subservient to the Father. So if the argument is that all the scholars got together and they decided something, therefore it's right, then these councils that came after that, they decided the opposite of that, and they were bigger. So how do we decide which one is right? basically our point in this here is that the entire doctrine of the Trinity is not proved from the Bible. It doesn't come within the first 3 centuries of Christianity. It came about by government force, and we'll see, this is a quote from a secular historian, J.M. Roberts, in his book Antiquity Unveiled. He says, so we had the Council of Nicaea, they decided Jesus was equal to God. Then we had these other councils coming later which voted opposite to that. And then you had the Emperor Theodosius, and here he's talking about him in this book, and he says, until Theodosius commanded his subjects to believe in the doctrine of the Trinity. So Theodosius convened the Council of Constantinople in 381. Here he included the Holy Spirit in the doctrine of the Trinity. And this is what this author is saying. He enforced his commands upon them by the most inhumane ways. That doctrine was rejected and resisted by the Greek and Roman followers of the Christos. That so senseless and unnatural doctrine should have been forced upon any people by any means, however tyrannical, is a mystery even more mysterious than the arithmetic that can make 1 3 and 3 1. So he's clearly saying here that the Emperor Theodosius, he used and he exerted his pressure as emperor to force everyone now to accept this official doctrine of the Trinity from the year 381 in the Council of Constantinople. So again, we just did it in brief. In the notes, everything is a bit more detailed. You can find the quotations there and all the relevant citations. But for us here, when we analyze the Trinity historically, we can see the early church fathers didn't believe in it. We can see it only came about from these councils which seem to be going against one another, which seem to be influenced by the emperors of the time. And these councils can in no way represent what Jesus himself really wanted us to believe. So this is something I think even Christians can agree upon, that whatever these scholars hash together with the pressure of the emperor can in no way tell you what Jesus himself really wanted to preach. So they should really be holding no weight. That's the argument we're trying to make here when it comes to this. Now, the last aspect which we're going to analyze the Trinity from is a logical philosophical analysis. Now this is one way it gets a bit confusing. We're going to have to talk a bit of philosophy here. We're going to have to talk a bit about it can get a bit confusing, but inshallah we'll go through it. If you understand it, you understand it. If not, at least it'll give you an understanding of how convoluted and confusing the belief is in the first place. So we're just going to talk about the logical problem of the Trinity. But before that, let's talk about the laws of logic and understand what this means. So almost every Christian and every Muslim scholar has accepted that the laws of logic are binding. What does this mean? 1 + 1 has to equal 2. 1 + 1 can never, ever, ever equal 3. It's impossible for 1 + 1 to ever be 3. That's something that all Muslim scholars have agreed upon, and most Christian scholars, 1 or 2 of them, have differed with that. But in general, everyone agrees to this. 1 + 1 can't equal to 3. Right? So that's a proper impossibility. That's what we call a logical impossibility. But an empirical impossibility. Is it possible for me to jump out of the window now and start flying through the air? Okay, it's impossible according to the laws of physics, but it's not logically impossible. It can happen. If Allah wants it to happen, it can happen. Can someone jump in a fire and it be cool for him? Yes, it can. It happened to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So all of these things here, they are impossible according to the laws of nature that are around us, but they can change at any time. So that's not a real impossibility. That's not what we call mustahil aqlan. That's mustahil adatan, meaning according to the laws of physics and nature. Yes, these things don't generally happen, but they can happen. But 1 + 1 equaling to 3, that's aqlan, logically, it can never ever happen. So this is where we're discussing now in the domain of logical impossibility, things that can never ever happen. Is the Trinity logically impossible, or is it possible? That's what we're talking about right now. So our basic premise here is that a person's faith cannot comprise of a logical impossibility. Right? A scientific impossibility, yes, part of faith is to believe in these things, like the fact that the fire didn't burn Ibrahim alayhi salam, like Jannah, Jahannam, all of these things that we're going to see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of these things that may go against the laws of the world around us is part of your faith to believe in it. But it can never be part of your faith to believe in something that's a logical impossibility. The fact that 3 is 1, 1 is 3, things like that, that can never be part of your faith. So just to differentiate between that, so already you can see now where this discussion is going. This is fortunately or unfortunately, but in today's contemporary discourse around the Trinity, this is where all the debate is. So, whereas 10, 20 years ago, the debate was quoting from the Bible, this verse, that verse, Nowadays, if you look at the debates, it's about this philosophical thing, whether it's possible, whether it's not possible, how can we, how do you look at it like this example. So, so this is something we need to understand, and we need to, maybe even if we don't get it completely, but be able to make a decent argument out of this. So what is the logical problem of the Trinity? The logical problem of the Trinity is basically that it asks you to believe in these 7 statements. To believe in the Trinity, you have to believe in these 7 statements. Number 1, the Father is God. Number 2, the Son is God. Number 3, the Holy Spirit is God. Okay? Number 4, the Son is not the Father. Number 5, the Father is not the Holy Spirit. Number 6, the Holy Spirit is not the Son. Now, what would be the logical conclusion about that? Let's just say, if the logical conclusion from that is, the Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God, they're not each other, therefore there are 3 gods. That would be the logical understanding of what the first 6 sentences. But what's the 7th sentence? There's only one God. So it's a complete contradiction now in between the two. And this is Orthodox doctrine. This is what you have to believe, to fit the Orthodox doctrine of the Trinity. You have to believe in these 7 statements. So this is known as the LPT, the logical problem of the Trinity. That how do we affirm all of these 7 statements in a logically possible way? So understand. So now, over the ages, as philosophy has developed, Christians have come up with many creative ways of trying to make this make sense.